Welcome back, everybody, to the Huddle Up podcast. I'm your host, Drew England. Once again, thanks for joining us. We got a special treat, I think, for me. Especially the banter and everything we talk about. Obviously, I'm an OU fan, but I try not to make it an OU podcast. But it's just for me and being around high school football and being a former coach and hearing from you guys, you insiders and guys that do it for a living. It's always fun to talk to you guys. But I got CJ Vogel, Texas insider, and on Texas football with us tonight. CJ, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, Drew, thanks very much for having me on tonight. Crazy time, so I'm excited to get to talk to you with them.
Gosh, I can't believe I got you on, especially with the everything going down with the All-American Bowl and everything going on in San Antonio, and the transfer portal seemingly changes from minute to minute and everything like that. But before we get going, just want to thank our sponsors, the Jeremy Hodge Auto Group, Gridiron Spice Company. There's some coaches down there in the DFW area that do a great job there with their spices and everything like that. And then obviously Live Audio headphones. My buddy Mark Clayton, former All-American at Oklahoma, has his company. So guys, go check out their products, everything like that. But no, let's dive right in. I know you're a bit of a time crunch. You actually got some other stuff going on tonight, so I don't want to keep you. But tell us about first, how you got started in doing what you're doing. And I'm good friends with Brandon Drum, and he does kind of the same thing for OU. But kind of talk about your involvement with recruiting, insiding, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually started, about 2018, 2019. I was a student at the University of Texas. I wanted to write the student newspaper, and I started covering baseball. And, Texas has typically had success in the baseball world. And for whatever reason, the year that I covered them, it was the worst year that Texas had ever had on the diamond. So enough of that, right? So,
yeah.
But while I was there, someone reached out and said, "Hey, we need someone to cover the University of Texas football." And I was like, "All right, yeah, that sounds great. I'd like $200 a month. That goes to a couple of packs of beer each week. I mean, that'd be fantastic." So, I started working with Kareem and the guys over at the Football Brainiacs and did that for a number of years. And then after I graduated, I had a buddy actually contact me with Bobby Burton and the guys over at On Texas Football, and the rest was history from there. But no, it's been a heck of a journey, and I mean, I guess what in the last 4 or 5 years since I started doing this full time, I mean, college football's changed more than I think I've ever experienced it changed in the 25 years of life I had prior to that.
No doubt. I mean, you came in kind of the right time when everything was kind of getting going. 2018, 2019, we were not really sure of what the whole landscape was going to look like. We knew it was going to have some changes, but I don't think anybody was ready for what is taking place now with paying guys, NIL, transfer portal, everything like that. And then guys, seemingly can go to a different school, all 4 years of their career. And you guys, God bless you, because you guys have a full-time job, just like college coaches and recruiting and all that stuff. You guys have to stay on top of it year round. And so you're definitely getting your money's worth. And I know down there in Austin, there's a lot of moving parts, just like it is in Norman and with the University of Oklahoma. But, give us an update on some of the things. I know if you guys are OU guys that are following this, and, if you're college football people, you're following it, but kind of give us an update. I know you guys have had some big names hit, obviously Cam Coleman, a few other people coming to Texas, but give us an update on the transfer portal and kind of the roster and where Sark and the staff is looking to go from here.
Yeah, it's been a real whirlwind, I'll say that. You mentioned, I mean, the ever-changing landscape of college football. Again, who would have thought it'd come to this? And I don't know how many players are in the portal. I don't know how many of them won't find homes after this year, but I mean, I'm sure we're setting records. But no, having covered Texas this portal cycle, it's been almost every single day. I thought, hey, Cheez-It Bowl, right? We're done December 31st. Let's roll on into the offseason and kind of cruise into, the January, the February months, and, fire it back up for spring football. And it's almost been busier now than it was at any point during the season. I was sitting here saying, so much for, the season ending. But no, I think Texas is up to about 23 or 24 portal departures, a number of them going into this portal window. You probably sit there and say, hey, that's a surprise. This is kind of surprising, in the sense that should I be concerned that all of these guys are exiting the program? And then you see how aggressive they've been in getting, all conference level guys to come in and play running back. Obviously, Cam Coleman was a big one. You get a big time linebacker, and you're saying, okay, I understand the vision, but what about the depth? What about, the roster numbers and everything that goes into it? And I think they have a plan in place that really hasn't been implemented anywhere else, at least not to this level. But it's all about making sure that when it comes down to it, they have enough bodies at the end of the day for what could be a 14, a 15, a 16 game season next fall.
Yep. Well, and you make an interesting point because I was listening to the Ref this morning, the OU Network, the radio show in Norman with Dari and Josh Helmer in the middle of the day from 9 to noon, and they were talking about, and they had Heather Dinage on, and they were talking about how the committee is getting ready to meet and decide on what's going to happen with the 12-team, 16-team playoff, and now they're even talking about a 24-team playoff here in a couple of years. And for me, and we can talk about this too, but I don't like where it's structured right now as far as the format where your playoff games. I think that and I've said this, and it's not just because of the records. I think it's 1-7 the teams that have byes, but I think that the teams that are the top seeds, the 1 through 4s, deserve a home playoff game. I mean, I don't know about you, but you guys saw it last year when Clemson came to Austin, and we saw it this year. Obviously, it didn't go our way with Alabama, but schools and having a playoff game on campus, it does something else. I mean, it obviously the money and the revenue and everything there, but the fans get to experience something that they haven't got to experience. And so my hope is that they can come in, to a good resolution, and hopefully we don't go to a 24-team playoff, because I think too much is too much sometimes. But for me, I don't know about you, and I don't know what your thoughts are on the format, but I think it should be a 1 through 16. I'm okay with 16 teams. I think it should be 1 through 8. Get a home playoff game, no byes, and we do it like a high school football playoff, situation, and not have this thing drag out to the middle of January.
No, I'm right there with you. I think 24 is too many. I think it's kind of awkward right now at 12 when it comes to, well, your top 4 seeds get a bye, but that really kind of works against you. But I'm with you. I think, 16, 8 teams get home bye or home games. I love the college football games or college football playoff games at a college campus. I think it's fantastic. Yeah. It brings out the absolute maximum for the campuses, for the students, for the fans, the whole cities. I mean, I think it's absolutely phenomenal to get those games on campuses, and I wish there would be more. I wish it would go to what we see at the lower level, where it's every game's at home. Obviously, I know that's not going to happen with contracts and how important it is for the Peach, the Sugar, the Rose, all the bowl games that have some sort of notoriety at this level in college football. But at the same time, it's like, man, these environments you just can't replicate outside of a select few Sundays or Saturdays in the fall, where it's rivalry on rivalry on rivalry. So that's something I really enjoy. But I like a 16 game, very simple, right? Do away with the conference championship weeks. Everybody plays week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4 if you continue to win. There's no byes. There's no inconsistencies in schedules depending on the seeding. You just play your typical playoff. And I think that's one of the sacrifices that you have to make ultimately is you probably won't have conference championship weekends anymore. And if you do, well, that's, again, it goes to a bit of the, you get put behind the 8 ball if you compete in it. And especially if you lose that game, well, now you got to play right away, and you don't get the benefit of the bye week. And you're
that's the thing is it now, like, and I understand back, it used to mean something more when you had a 14 playoff or even the old BCS model and everything like that. But now, it'd be great to win an SEC championship or a Big Ten championship, sure. But at the end of the day, that's not the big prize. And I know the conferences want to hold on to that and for money and for, being able to market their brand and everything like that. But at the end of the day, it does no good for anybody, really. No. Because like you said, Alabama or whoever it is in that game gets to play an extra game. And Lord forbid, if your quarterback or one of your star receivers or somebody goes down, then you're nothing for the playoff. And so does it really, it's too much of a risk rather than being a reward in this case. And so I know it's funny to say, but I agree with you. I don't think that we should do, conference championship week anymore. And that's, I never thought I would say that 10 years ago, because you're like, oh, no more SEC championship, no more Big 12, no more. Yeah. And sorry, Jerry Jones, I know you're a Cowboys fan, but sorry, Jerry, you're not going to have the Big 12. And obviously he's going to get a voice because he always does. But, it's one of those things where I don't think they're going to do away with it quite yet, but I think that's coming. And I think that it has to, because you're talking about a long season. And I get the NFL is long and all that stuff, but you also have some buys and different things sprinkled in, and that's their job, and so now it's becoming a job. And so for me, I agree with you. And I think it should, like you said, the first 8 teams, get the bye, and then, it's going from there, because and be done, at the end of December or wherever the case is,
right,
with that too. And back to the transfer portal and back to the things that we were talking about earlier. I like the thing that you said on one of your videos a couple of days ago, I think it was, when you were talking about, the big spending on development and how that is, seemingly over for a lot of these bigger programs. And I really liked what you said. And so I want to dive into that a little bit, where I believe, schools can't afford to do that anymore with, when we're talking about portal guys, obviously, but more so high school, guys that you're bringing in, you're paying top dollar for some of these guys, and, they can end up leaving if they don't like it. But, give us more of your thoughts on the big spending for development.
Yeah, no, I think we're entering, a world of college football where, and depending on where you're at, I think Oklahoma, Texas, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Georgias of the world, every year is basically judged by what you do, right? It's, are you in a place to compete for a national championship or the conference championship? And if you're not, then you kind of have to sit there and face the music of, well, why weren't we there? And I understand you got to build your program up to the point, but at the same time, it's all about that end result for a given year, or how competitive will you be for the year upcoming. And too often, especially over the last 2 or 3 years, do you look around at these competitive teams and you see, hey, they brought in some really talented freshmen this past year. They got a great recruiting class. And then the fall comes and you see all that recruiting class sitting on the sideline, and then they're not competing. And you're sitting there saying, well, they just poured a lot of NIL resources, a lot of funds, a lot of effort to get those guys on the campus, and they're not competing for you on the field. What does that do for you on the short term, right? I understand that you got to sit there and develop, but who's to say that you ever get to reap the benefit of winning that recruitment when the kid could just hop in the portal and go play somewhere else, right? Absolutely. Your development should benefit you and not somebody else when that kid ultimately gets upset that they're not seeing the field early, right? So that's kind of where I'm at, is do away with a lot of the big recruiting wins, right? Of course, you're going to need some offensive linemen, and I'm not saying to completely abandon high school recruiting. No. That'll never happen. You need your Michael Fasusis. You need your Bowens to come in and play right away for you as true freshmen. But ultimately, it's this. It's, if you have as much money as the University of Texas did sitting on the sideline last year, and you missed the playoffs, you just messed up an entire year for your fan base, for your donors, for your athletic department, because the misallocation of funds should have been on the field for a guy out of the portal, a guy that you could have retained going into the draft last year. It should be all on the field. And right now, I think that's where it's trending.
Yeah, and I think that the frustrating part for fans and even donors and even people that spend money and help out with, some of these collectives and some of the things like that, and they're deserving to ask these questions. Hey, why is so-and-so, on the sideline when we're paying him this much money? And I know a lot of Sooner fans out there are going to say, Jaden Ott. Yes, Jaden Ott was a complete bust. Absolutely. And I don't know the final number, and I don't think we oftentimes know the final number of some of these, NIL deals. And a lot of people think that it's all monetary. It's not. It's a package deal where you get cars, houses, whatever the case is. And I think a lot of times it too often, people are asking the question, well, we're paying so much money for CJ Baxter or for so-and-so or whoever it is. Why is their ass sitting on the sideline? Well, misappropriation of funds. And I think that now these schools are starting to, wise up a little bit and say, okay, well, and I know with Jim Nagy and some of these GMs that are now kind of sitting at the table and being able to put together a draft board, being able to put together a list of guys that say, okay, well, this position we're only going to spend this much money, and you're starting to see teams with an NFL type of model. And I think with Oklahoma, with Texas, with some of these other schools, they're sitting here saying, okay, well, we can't afford anymore to not hit on some of these guys, especially in the transfer portal, and then obviously with your freshmen and your high 4 and 5 star recruits coming out of high school. And so for me, it's like, where do you spend that money? Obviously you have needs, and like Texas, you're going to have to start rebuilding some defense. You're going to have to start really building some offensive line. And with Oklahoma, there's some offensive line, there's some running backs, there's some things that we need to spend money on. And I think that you have to get the right people looking in the right places and spending the right amount of money on certain positions, so you don't have, what you had with obviously both of our schools last year.
Yeah, I think it's funny, because, when Nagy got to Oklahoma, a lot of opposing fan bases sat there and said, oh, well, you're going to go find value at all these low schools. How do you expect these guys to compete and contribute at a big-time SEC school? Well, you're starting to see a lot of other schools kind of adopt that, right? It's, well, if we got a lot of guys on our roster, if they're not providing the value that we need on the field, well, we're either going to have to ask them to take a pay cut or say, hey, best of luck to you, and it's different ways to go about building that roster. But I think at the same time, it's how far will your dollar stretch for you? And that across every general manager's office and front office in college football is going to be the exact same. Texas has done it a little differently in the sense that, hey, to hell with depth. We're going to roll with 75 guys. That'll be our 2 deep, our 3 deep, whatever we need. But those guys are going to be high dollar in guys at the very top, right? Our top 40 is going to be significantly higher paid or higher talent-wise than what it was previously. So at the end of the day, whatever gets you to that point is how these front offices will work. It's just really interesting to see how each school does about it a different way. Texas Tech, another one. Indiana, obviously, they're playing big boy money as well. So it's really fascinating.
They're just writing blank checks because of Mark Cuban and Cody Campbell. They've got the funds to do it, and hey, it's worked out for them. Obviously, one is in the national championship game, and another. You bring up a good point too, but another one is bringing your guys along with you when you get another job. You start seeing that effect at LSU now with Lane Kiffin. Many people thought that a lot of those Ole Miss guys were going to go with him. We haven't seen it. But at the same time, a lot of those JMU guys, what did they do? They went with Kirk Cinetti, and now you're seeing the benefits of it, where Indiana can afford to spend on big players because they have a low budget of guys that are in the program with Cignetti because they just wanted to go play for the guy. And so for me, you're going to start seeing – yep. Oh, yeah, Oklahoma, the North Texas Cowboys. Yeah, absolutely, They're that's what they get, 25 guys, I think, or something like that from North Texas, and that's going to be really interesting to see. I'm kind of excited to see how that, even though I'm not an Oklahoma State fan and we don't play them anymore, in which I think we should, but it's going to be interesting to see how they've rebuilt that. They had to completely rebuild that roster. No better way to do that than hiring a guy and bringing, your players with you. But to that point, you're starting to see and this is here's a good question right here. How can you run a scout team with 75 players? Yeah. You could do it. I mean, obviously, this is for guys that don't really know. Obviously, I've been in the coaching. Here's how it goes is you basically in college, you have a defensive practice, you have an offensive practice, and then you come together for some, specialty stuff and some special teams. But for the most part, you have your 2 deep guys, sometimes 3 deep on offense, same as you have. So you have basically 40 guys on each side, and you have scout teamers that are running scout team defense. You have scout team guys that are running scout team offense, and you basically really don't see each other until you come together for periods on good and inside run, different stuff like that too. So you can do it with 75 guys. I know it's not ideal from the 120, but it still can be done with the current format that it's in.
Yeah, if I could build on that just a little bit, what's going to be interesting here, what my kind of forecast for Texas, and I'm sure a few other schools will adopt this as well. The SEC allows teams to hold or now carry 105 scholarships, right? That's a rise from absolutely. 85 to 105. What I mean by 75 or in that 70 range for Texas is, look, previously, and at least on this roster, your dollar had to stretch from 1 to 85 guys. Now, your top 5 guys probably get paid a ton, probably paid all the way down to about 60 or 75 guys, right? I think what you're going to see is Texas will shrink your big money to the top 40, top 50 guys. They'll carry some medium money guys up to about 75, and then from 76 to 105, those roster spots, those scholarships will be basically your walk-ons. Those will be guys that are developmentally, they're ways away from ever seeing the field. They're guys that are just happy to be at the University of Texas. They're guys that, hey, coach, you give me a jersey, I'm here to go to school, but wherever you need me on the field and practice,
academic scholarships,
I'm there for you. So it's not going to be your big money guys, and that's kind of how I see them shrinking. But also,
well, and here's another example of doing it. Say your NFL teams, your 53-man rosters, you still got guys that are on the practice squad. You think of it like that a little bit, and obviously your pay, your big name guys, your Patrick Mahomes is going to get paid this much, and then your guys are like Drake Stoops that are on the practice squad at LA are going to get paid this much or whatever, but they're still a part of the team, and so it's not your 120 anymore. It's about 105, and you made a good point there. And it's just structured just almost like – and most of these bigger schools, like you talked about, the Ohio States, the Oklahomas, Texas, everybody like that, they're kind of going to that NFL model where they're paying their top guys what they feel like they deserve, and then it kind of trickles down as you get into the lower guys on the roster, guys that you said they're just happy to be there and stuff like that. And there's a role for everybody, and you need those kind of guys – wherever you're at, no matter what school. And I think that it's good that you still have guys that are, quote unquote walk-ons and people there. But no, it's getting to become, an NFL model type of, situation for a lot of these players.
Hey, Drew, let me ask you this, because, when we do our shows and we talk about culture and we talk about what the locker room is like, and, you've been in some locker rooms before, you've coached them, you've seen them. In college, it's all about, hey, from year in a year, I know I'm going to battle with these guys every single year. For the most part, especially recently, that changes with how often these kids transfer now. But, when you enroll somewhere for 3 years, those guys that you enroll with, you expect to see about 80% of them until you graduate. That's no longer the case now.
Nope.
How do you envision that camaraderie or that culture installation changing on a year in, year out basis as well?
Well, I think that's the question that some of these staffs and some of these front office people, and it's funny to say front office when you're talking about college football, but that's where it is okay, how do we hit on the right people, obviously talent-wise, and it's the same thing with the NFL. I mean, you're going to do your due diligence, you're going to go down your draft board, you're going to vet some of these draft picks, you're going to vet some of these guys in the portal, you're going to find out what they're about and stuff like that. And I think that's what a lot of these teams and a lot of these college football programs are doing is, okay, we know this kid is talented. He was at such and such school last year. He had this stats and all this stuff. Okay, well, let's talk to some people around him. Let's talk to some people that know him. Is he going to be a good fit for – and I know BV is big on culture at Oklahoma and Jim Nagy and those guys. And so that's what they're ultimately doing is they're saying, okay, we know this kid can play. We know he's got, the skills that we need and the fit that we're going to have for XYZ position or whatever. Okay, how is this guy going to fit into our locker room? And I think where a lot of these coaches are doing is they're saying, okay, yes, this kid's talented, but we want to make sure that he's a right fit, even if he comes in for a year, even if he's only here for a season or however much eligibility he has. And are we willing to take a chance on a kid who maybe has a little bit of and it's just like the old school recruiting. And I've been a part of some of guys getting to play at the next level and stuff like that. And being able to have one of those phone calls from a college coach that's saying, okay, coach, we saw your running back. He's a good player. What's he like in the classroom? What's he like there? And I think that they're asking some of these questions, not to that degree, because they see, and for some of you guys that don't maybe understand the world of recruiting a little bit is these college coaches already know the kids can play. They watch the film, they get their GAs and do all that stuff. And their questions are not surface level anymore. They're all right. Well, what is this kid like? Has he gotten in trouble with, whatever the, law, or has he been arrested or, stuff like that. And so going back to the point where big spending on development, if you're going to spend big on development, you better know what kind of kid you're getting And then at the same time, in the portal, is Cam Coleman going to be a good fit at Texas? Is such and such going to be a good fit at Oklahoma? Is, John Mateer, that's kind of the evaluation that we had. Obviously, we got their offensive coordinator and kind of knew that, but there's places where, they kind of do that digging, and just like the NFL, when they sit down and interview a guy, they're not sitting there talking about, hey, how's your golf game? They want to know how this kid is a person, because they're spending a lot of money bringing you in, and they want to make sure that, it's the right investment.
That's a large part of it, making sure the investment, pays its dividends on the field rather than sideline.
Yep.
Right.
Because you don't want to have an Antonio Brown. Yes, you're very talented, but you're gonna get Antonio Brown, you're gonna get the whole person, right? So and that's one of those things. And for me, being able to talk to some of these guys, oh, here's a good one right here. This is a great question, Jimmy. Let's dive into this a little bit. There you go.
Yeah. No, I love Parker. Parker's I've known Parker since I think his sophomore year at Lovejoy. So been around him and the family a long time. Look, Parker's a really talented wide receiver. I don't know where he stacks up immediately in that Oklahoma wide receiving room, but look, he is very, very underrated long speed, big deep ball threat, where I think the next step for his game is getting off of press man coverage and creating separation in his routes. But the long speed is there. The big playability is there. He was, early in the season, I think one of the biggest and only playmakers Texas had on its offense. You go back, you look at the Ohio State game. He had 2 big catches in that one. He had an 83-yard touchdown the week after that as well. The long speed is where you'll look at him and say, okay, he can really separate down the field. I'm talking about your Mills concepts, your straight goes, post routes, whatever it is. Yep. You send him 30 yards down the field, he will find ways to create and separate. But yes, that I think he's a hardworking kid, and he's someone that you talked about. You go to the portal, you want someone to acclimate immediately to your locker room. He's a kid that will do exactly that.
Yep. Absolutely. And that was part of Oklahoma's problem last year, is we did not at times, with the exception of Isaiah Sategno in some busted coverages, and that's going to be another big decision, and hopefully that's coming sooner rather than later. Is Isaiah Sategno going to come back? I think he will. I think there's indication saying that he will. But again, to that point too, what really happened with Parker at Texas? I think I can kind of go off of that a little bit. Tell us a little bit about, what I know. There's a lot of rumors. Oh, Texas didn't want him in Oklahoma. What do you know from that relationship of why is he not at Texas anymore?
Yeah. Based off of everything that I know from the Texas side, Texas would have welcomed them back, right? Texas put together a competitive offer on the table for him. But at the same time, if you're Parker Livingston and you hear all about Texas's pursuit of what will be one of the highest, rated guys out of the portal, you sit there and you say, well, I was just your number 2 and number 3 guy throughout the year. Where do I fit into this? And I think Texas's message was, hey, you can compete. And at that point, I don't know if, the NIL offer ruffled feathers. I don't know. But ultimately, I think it was one wanting to feel valued on his end, on top of living with Arch and everything that he's done for the program. But, when you see the opportunity to be a, top end guy elsewhere on a similarly competitive team, I think that is something that is hard to say no to.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I don't care how you get guys. I'm excited to have him. I know there's a lot of people excited to have him. I know some Texas fans are like, yeah, go ahead and take him, whatever the case is. Whether you have Cam Coleman or not, and whether he was willing to stay, that's just another piece of, a good offense that has, come together there towards the end of the year and started really hitting their stride and everything like that. And so for me, I'm excited. Obviously, there's a lot of, great things that are happening in the offseason for us. We went out and got some guys in the portal and did some stuff as well. And then obviously hiring a tight ends coach like Jason Witten doesn't suck either. So I'm really excited about that too. But it's crazy to think that, that guys like that are willing to go somewhere else because the value, and not necessarily the monetary value, it's the fact that, hey, I feel like I've busted my tail here, and I'm going to be the number 2 or number 3 guy. It's the world we live in, and it happens more often than not now. So, last thing, and I know you gotta get out of here, but last couple of things. What were your thoughts on the semifinal games? Obviously, with Oregon and Indiana and Miami and Ole Miss, and then let's get our national championship predictions, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, no, it's been a fun year of college football, and Indiana's ascent, continued ascent, I think, is something that in a million years of college football, again, I don't think anyone really would have anticipated this being where we're at, where in 2026 you're looking at Indiana as the clear favorite for a national championship, where on the flip side, can you envision a Carson Beck as a national championship? Personally, no, but my biggest takeaway of all of this, and this goes back to, obviously the Oregon game, the Alabama game. I don't know if I've seen another team as well coached, as well prepared as Indiana, like maybe ever. And I'm talking about like all those LSU teams, all those Alabama teams, Georgia, obviously. But these kids are just never out of position. They're never in a wrong assignment defensively. They get a hat on the hat seemingly every single play running the football offensively. If you go and grade their assignments at every position, I couldn't tell you a position that's been lackluster maybe in multiple games this year. Like it's been so impressive across the board, and I don't.
They just don't make mistakes. They don't beat themselves. And that's
incredible.
That's the thing that I've been most impressed with, and obviously with me being a coach, that's the thing that I look at. Yes, I like guys that are talented. I like guys that can have speed and stretch the field and run the ball. But if you cannot make mistakes, I mean, that's just going to set you far and above just about any other team, because the discipline, the physicality, and everything that they bring. They, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but they're one of the lowest penalized teams in the country.
Yeah.
And it's been fun to watch. And, for me, it's going to be an interesting game, because you're like, man, okay, Carson Beck was at Georgia last year making a lot of money. Now he's at Alabama making a lot of, or now he's at Miami making a lot of money. And you're going to start seeing guys that, you're like, and now I saw a rumor today. I don't even know if it's true, because, you never know what you read on the internet, but now that, quarterback at Alabama is now thinking about maybe, Ty Simpson is thinking about not going to the NFL because he wants to make some more money. And now he may flip the script and he'd be at, somewhere else. And so it's crazy. But for me, man, I think Indiana is a fascinating story. I've liked what they've done. Here's Jimmy's prediction. I think that's pretty close. But it's going to be a heck of a game. I'm with it. I don't like Miami. Never liked Miami. I don't know if I like Miami. I don't know if I hate Miami worse than I do Texas, but for so many years, my dad was growing up, and even in the 80s, he used to talk about those old games where, Jimmy Johnson and all that stuff. And so for me, I would love to see Indiana win a national championship. I think that's so cool, and where we're at in college football, So yeah, I probably pretty close to that prediction right there.
I like that prediction a lot. And again, just to put this into perspective, this was the losingest program in the history of the sport 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And now they're in year 2 under Signetti. They're looking far and away
and I heard Heather Dinich talk about, she's a Indiana grad, and I heard her talking about on the radio today how her friends, when they used to get up and think about, hey, do you want to go to the game today? No, let's just tailgate and hang out. And so those were some, and she goes, you never in a million years would you think that Indiana would be in a place like this. And not only that, but 2 years in a row having the seasons that they've had and stuff like that. I think it's just going to be a storybook inning, and to be able to win in Miami, that'd be crazy. So
yeah, for Mendoza too, from there. So I'm with you. I think Indiana wins by double digits.
Double digits. I like it. Guys, it's been a fun show. I know we're going to keep it short tonight because CJ's got some other stuff that he's got to go and do. But CJ, thanks for joining us. Tell everybody what you're doing and where we can find you on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm over on Twitter at CJ Vogel _OTF. I got the goofy little cartoon profile picture still. So if you see a bad take or you see a tweet you don't like, it's probably from me over there. So hand up, apologies, ahead of time.
Absolutely. And always horns down. We want to thank our sponsors for the Huddle Up, the Jeremy Hodge Auto Group down in Ardmore. Go check out their selection of new pre-owned and trucks, cars, SUVs, everything like that. Live Audio, my buddy Mark Clayton doing a great thing over there. Go check out. We've got promo codes for 20% off of headphones, and then Gridiron Spice for the guys down there in the DFW area. But for me, Drew England, CJ, thanks so much again for joining us. We'll see you guys again soon.